And we are live. Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to today's 220-1001 Core 1 A Plus study group. As soon as I get all my wires untangled, I don't have my headphones in. What's the worst that could happen? Hey, chat room. Good to see everybody. Thanks for being here. If you're here watching this on the replay, we'll get started in about 6 minutes. 6 minutes. We're running a little behind. I had to move some cables around. I had to remember how to do all of this. The holiday is so awesome because we can just kind of relax for a couple of weeks, and it's been so great to have some things not quite as hectic as it usually is, but you forget how to do everything. What are all these buttons again? Oh, it's like riding a bicycle, though. It all comes back. Let's get the headphones in, the in-ear monitors. Here we go. Now I can hear myself. That's much better. Hi, chat room. Let's pop out the chat so I can see what's going on. Pop out the chat. Pop it out. All right. Put this over there. Put this over here. We could probably pause the video. We don't need to see that. This is a Core 1 A Plus study group, not the Core 2. Core 2 will be in 2 days. On Thursday, we're doing a Core 2 A Plus study group. It'll be great. But all the questions today will be from the Core 1, the 220-1001 exam objectives. So we are good to go. Folks checking in from everywhere, from South Africa, from Barbados, from Jacksonville, Florida. Got cool this morning, didn't it, Jacksonville, Florida? It's freezing outside. I don't know how people live like this. What is it right now? 54 degrees Fahrenheit? How is that possible? How do people live this way? Oh, us Floridians, we don't know. This mouse, this is not a trackball. It is a mouse. Kind of hard to see from the angle. It's very dark now. I need to adjust this a little. Well, we'll do this. Here we go. So this is called a, look at the size of this mouse. This is actual size. It looks like I'm holding it close to the to the camera and it looks oversized. No, it's actually that way. Your entire hand sits on the mouse. I have a big hand. I have this enormous brain surgeon, sort of non-brain surgeon hand. You don't want me to be a brain surgeon. So your entire hand sits on the mouse. It is a wonderful thing. It's the worst mouse for gaming, but a great mouse for doing things. It's so comfortable. It is called a hand shoe mouse designed by Hippus, Hippus. It's called hand shoe because I guess it's as big as a shoe and you put your hand in it. How about that? How about that one? It's a weird mouse. Hey, Saudi Arabia and LA and Charlotte and Riverside, California and Frankfurt, Huntsville, Alabama. Greece is here. Orange County, California. Thanks for being here, which is different than Orange County, Florida, isn't it? There's Orlando. Mention Orange County, and there they are. Hey, Orlando. I can't do trackballs. I don't want to, I just can't manage it with the track. I prefer just the whole arm, just sort of moving around and doing that. Speaking of which, I've now unplugged my mouse. I've now created a problem for everybody. There we go. So we almost had the worst possible scenario. We have to do the entire study group with the keyboard. How about that? That would never work, by the way. That would never happen. Hello, Norwood. We'd cancel the whole thing. It's over. Do I have Server Plus practice tests? I don't. Server Plus, we don't hear much of those here. So we gotta figure that out. We gotta make that happen. God, there are some new things happening this year. I love 2022. I feel like it's going to be a great year. I'm very optimistic. There's lots of things I'm planning, lots of things I want to be able to do. So I think that might work out pretty well. Okay, recordings are going. There's my Cylons down here working. Streaming looks good, which it did not before. I have a cable problem, but I have a spare cable, so I'm going to swap that out when we're done here and throw that cable away. I know. I'm not sure why YouTube switched the times around. I'm worried about the other live streams that I set up. But I set everything to be noon. I never change it from noon. It ended up being some weird time on there, like 5:25 in the afternoon. No, I'm not. I'm planning a 5:25 study group. Sorry, we're gonna do the regular study group. So we were a little late getting started on the pre-show, but that's why we have a pre-show. So when things mess up, I can move some cables around and get things running, and then we're okay. Hopefully we're okay. Hyper Chaos Bringer in the chat room. Pastor 1001 on the 17th of December. Congratulations. So you must be working on your 1002 right now, I'm guessing. If you're doing them in order. Some people don't do them in order. Some people do the Core 2 first and then the Core 1. Completely up to you and how you like to do that. Let's get a green light on the iPad. Nope, cancel that. Cancel. Green light is good. That looks fantastic. This looks good. Let's check. All the cameras look all right. I think with that, it's top of the hour. We should be able, and there's the piece right there saying it's time to get started. And I could not agree more. Let's do a study group, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the January 2022 Professor Messer Core 1 A+ study group. This is a study group where I will ask you questions that come from the 220-1001 exam objectives that come from CompTIA, and then we'll see how we do. Everybody who is here live will be able to answer these online. I've got plenty of questions to go through. Spent the weekend writing up some of these questions. So one of the things that we will focus on in this study group is all Core 1 questions. If you are here live, you can participate interactively with us by popping open a new browser window, and you can browse over to this URL, professormesser.com/QA. If you do that, there will be a question waiting for you on that page. That QA that is there is all interactive. So all you have to do is go to that page, and then you just sit there and wait, and the questions will change automatically right in front of you. If you'd like to have an app to do a similar thing, there is an app available in your favorite app store. It is called the Socrative Student app. Socrative is the service we use for this. Socrative Student app is what we are looking for. And if you do use the app, it will ask you for a name, ask you for a room name. That room name is Professor Messer, ProfessorMesser. Now, if you've done all of that, there'll be a question waiting for you. We call this our rewind question because it is a question from last study group, I guess last month, last year when we did the study group. The question shows, a system administrator is installing an operating system on a newly provisioned cloud server. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Would it be SaaS, hybrid, IaaS, Elastic, or PaaS? It's got to be one of those, right? Go through that list, see which ones you think are correct. If you think you know the answer, do not answer in the chat room. No hints in the chat room. You instead want to follow that URL that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. There it is. Go to that link and lock in the answer. And then we will come back to this question in just a moment. Well, in the meantime, I want to welcome you. Thanks for being here. We have so many different people that are online, different things that we're doing, but you can always keep track of what we're doing by following us on our favorite social media. You can either go to YouTube at professormesser.com/YouTube, where you can subscribe. That's a great place to go to see all the new videos that are coming out. You've also got daily pop quiz questions for A+. You can find those pop quiz questions on Twitter at professormesser.com/Twitter or on Instagram at professormesser.com/Instagram. If you already have your certification, you may be here collecting a continuing education unit credit or a CEU. If sometime during this first hour, I will give you instructions on how you can receive an email from me that qualifies you as being here. There's a whole bunch of secrets around that, but you have to listen in sometime during this first hour, and I'll be glad to provide you with that information. Let's talk about the current A+ exam, probably one of the most popular questions I'm getting lately. because the existing version of the A+ exam, the two A+ exams you have to take, those versions are the 221001 and the 221002. The part that's interesting is these versions of the exams were released on January the 15th of 2019. And as many of you have seen in the past, there's usually about a 3-year cycle before we happen to see a new set of exams arrive. But you may notice that over the last couple of years, it hasn't really been that normal. So it's been a little bit of a challenge. And if you've watched last year as Security Plus was released, as Network Plus was released, you'll notice they were a little bit further behind than you might expect. So I would expect also that you will probably not see a new A+ exam in January. I don't think that's going to happen. But let's say it did. Let's say that they come out with a new exam in January. We still don't know when the official day will be. Keep checking back on the CompTIA site for that. But let's say by some magic, they were able to push through and get a new version there available in January, this month, January. That would mean that based on previous retirement dates, we would have about 6 months before this exam would retire. The important takeaway here is that if you are working currently on your A+ certification or you're planning to take your A+ certification, you've just started your studies, keep studying. Do not wait for a new version of this exam to come out because this current version will be around until at least July. If I was a betting man, it might even be after that. But we know at a bare minimum, 6 months from a release is usually what CompTIA will do. For Network Plus and Security Plus, they extended it to 9 months, a little bit more than 9 months, I think, in the case of Security Plus. So keep working. Do not wait for a new version of the certification to come out because if you wait, you lose. Having the certification in your pocket is your win. Everybody else who has the certification is going to get the job, and you're not going to get the job because you decided to wait for some reason. So don't wait. So take the current versions of the exam, get certified, get that job, get the better job, and do everything you want to do with your career. These exams, whether they will be the ones that are released now or the ones that are released sometime later this year, will be, again, 2 exams, just like the 221001 and 1002, 90 minutes per exam. On the 1001, you need to score 675. On the 1002, you need to score 700, and those are on a scale from 100 to 900. The important fact of this, if you are planning to pass your exam and you're wondering or worrying that, oh, if I pass my exam now and a new version comes out, will my exam be invalidated? Will it be expired? Will it be no good? No. If you pass your exam, it's good for 3 years. So that's the important part. If you were to pass your exam right now, that exam would still be good 3 years from now. You would need to, of course, update it at that point. But keep working on the current exam. It's the one you should probably be working on. And even if they do release a new version of the exam, back up to that real quick, even if they were to release a new version of the exam right now, there wouldn't be any books available. There wouldn't be any training materials available. We have to make those when the exams come out. So you're still about 3 to 6 months after an exam is released until you even have study materials. Another good reason to stick with the current version. So there's also a set of topics on the Core 1 that we'll be discussing today. Those will be mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, and hardware network troubleshooting. We'll go through all of those today. You'll get a little bit of everything. And if you've noticed on my site, every single one of my videos for both of these exams is available for you to watch, and they're absolutely free. There's no registration. There's no paywall. There's nothing extra you have to do. You simply go to YouTube and watch them. You simply visit my website and you can watch them. There are offline versions of these available. I also have course notes and practice exams and all kinds of other things. You can find those on my website with my Success Bundle. Find that at professormesser.com/1001success for more information on that Success Bundle. Also, there's some free Q&A on my site. These are the Take 10 Challenge questions. They're available at professormesser.com/take10. That's another good one to go to if you're looking for some additional Q&A. It has archived questions from previous study groups, and they are in a testing type environment, which some people seem to like. Have a look at those at professormesser.com/take10. Take 10. There is also an audio replay of this available in podcast form. You can visit professormesser.com/podcast, and you can update your podcast listening program for your A+, your Network Plus, or Security Plus study groups. I will also tell you that if you are on one of the many streaming services out there, you can simply look for Professor Messer on your Spotify or whatever you like to use, and we're out there as well. They have a lot of podcasts there, and ours is there as well. You can find that no matter where you might be. It's nice to have that available. If you're watching the video replay of this on YouTube, then you'll notice in the YouTube video description there are timestamps, and you can jump right to the questions and answers. That might save you some time. We're able to do this because of my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching the replay. Everybody say hi to Lori. Hi, Lori. She's watching this, and she's writing down all those times and putting it into that text. You can go back years and have a look at these timestamps. Those are in the YouTube video description. Well, we do one of these study groups every month, but when we're not doing a live stream, you can still talk with us and others by going to our Discord channel. Our Discord server is at professormesser.com/Discord. And if you go to that link, you can join us. There's usually someone there who's working through and doing some other things with the Discord. There's always somebody in there talking about A+ or Network Plus or Security Plus or almost anything else around it. So feel free to have a look at those Discord channels. There might be some good information to gather from there. I think it's nice when other people are available and can help with a lot of that. If you are planning to take your A+ certification exam, I'll also remind you that you should not pay full price for your vouchers. We have discount vouchers on the Professor Messer website. You don't need a coupon code. You don't need to add one of those extensions to your browser to somehow get the best price. They're already discounted. Just go to professormesser.com/vouchers, and you can get a voucher for any of your CompTIA exams. And if you purchase the voucher from my site, I'll also give you a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This is an ebook full of a set of exam hacks, life hacks for the exam. Can give you some tips and tricks. Some of them you may know, some of them you may not. And there's some things you can do during your exam that might give you a few extra points when the final score is tallied. All of this is inside my exam hacks. You can find that at professormesser.com/vouchers. So let's have a look at that question that we were going through. A system administrator is installing an operating system on a newly provisioned cloud server. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Would it be SaaS? Would it be hybrid? Would it be IaaS? Would it be elastic, or would it be PaaS? We see that 51% of you say the answer is IaaS, infrastructure as a service. 20% of you chose software as a service. 23% of you chose platform as a service. And then we also have 4% that chose hybrid, 1% that chose elastic. Hardly anybody chose that one. If you've just got a basic system, you're in, and really you just have some storage space, some memory, and you need to install the operating system, then you are most likely using infrastructure as a service. Sometimes you'll see this referred to as hardware as a service because you're responsible for setting up this system and getting everything running the way it should be. And if you're ever in a case where you're installing the operating system, you're configuring the operating system, you're maintaining the operating system, then most likely you have purchased a system that is based around the infrastructure as a service model. And that's one that's very common on many websites. If you have a web server, you may be purchasing a separate system as infrastructure as a service. 55% of you chose that one, got it absolutely right. It would not be software as a service because you're the one installing the operating system. What kind of service is this? I'm having to install my own software? No, it would not be software as a service. And it would not be platform as a service because we don't have to build our own application based on modules that are on this platform. So it would not be platform as a service either. Infrastructure as a service was the right answer, and 56% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. If you are curious as to where these different thresholds are for those, you can have a look at charts like this. These are very common to find that if you're doing everything yourself, you manage it all. But if it's infrastructure as a service, you're managing either the last 4 or 5 squares at the bottom. Sometimes operating systems are included with infrastructure as a service. Sometimes they aren't. So you could even maybe gray that in as between blue and yellow. If it's platform as a service, you can see a lot more of this is managed by the provider. You've got to come up with the data in the application. And then as software as a service, something like Google Mail, something like Yahoo Mail, if you use those online mail systems, if you use Hotmail or Outlook 365, it's software as a service. Everything's included. All you do is log in. That is the right answer for this one. Infrastructure as a service, if you chose C, you got this one absolutely right. Well done. So well done with this. This is a good question because it's one from last month. Helps us know that everybody is able to get in and answer these questions. Now let's do some new questions. I always write new questions for every study group, and I have a new one for you. But before we get to that question, I'll remind you that when you start your A+ exam, you will get a series of questions at the beginning, usually about a handful of questions, that are what CompTIA calls performance-based questions. Performance-based questions are questions that are anything but multiple choice. They might be fill in the blank. They might be putting you at a command prompt. There might be a scenario where you're dragging and dropping. Maybe you're building something on the screen. There's lots of things that it could be. I have for you a performance-based question. The first new question of every study group is a performance-based question. And what this one happens to be one where you have to put things in order. In this particular choice, the order is given, but make sure you pay very close attention to that on the exam. Here is the question that is your performance-based question of the month. Order these technologies from lowest throughput to highest. And the 5 different technologies that I'm listing are cable modem, USB 2.0, one stream of 802.11n, 100 base TX, and SATA revision 3.0. So order these technologies from lowest throughput to highest. We have cable modem, USB 2.0, one stream of 802.11n, 100 base TX, and SATA revision 3.0. Whenever you see these questions on the exam, you're putting things in order. Sometimes on the exam, they're drag and drop, or you have to put them in a certain order. In this case, it's a fill in the blank. So all of these are labeled A, B, C, D, and E. If you think they are already in the correct order, you simply need to put in A, B, C, D, E, and you're done. I don't think they're in the correct order. I know they're not in the correct order. That would be a very boring question. I keep saying one of these times I'm going to put them in the exact order. No, what point is that? I want you to figure it out. See if you can figure out the details of this. Lock in your question by going to professormesser.com/QA. And of course, please don't answer in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We'll be able to get through that. Some questions that came up earlier. Is the training material available as an audio-only stream for listening on the go? There is. If you go to my website, there on that Success Bundle page, you have lots of options. And one of the options is the audio download, where you can download all the MP3s and have it available on the system. So that's another nice one. You can download it all and have it and stick it into whatever listening you like to do. And of course, on the newer iOS is great because you can download the zip file. It will unzip and put all of the audio into a folder, and then you can just grab the audio from there in your favorite listening program, which is kind of nice. I use a number of different ones on my mobile device. Sometimes I listen to it at podcasts. Sometimes I listen to it with VLC. And there's lots of other MP3 and audio listening applications, apps you can get for your mobile device that make it very, very useful to be able to do that. Let's see how you did. I see a number of people putting their answers in. Been kind of stalling as you've been adding these in, but let's go through each one of these. Let's figure out what the throughputs are and see where it would fit into this list. So let's start at the very top. This is asking us to order these technologies from lowest throughput to highest. One of the things I find interesting about the exam is sometimes they put that order differently. Sometimes it's highest to lowest. So make sure you pay attention to that. That's super important. The one that I think is the slowest speed in the list of these 5 would be 100 base TX, because 100 base TX operates at 100 megabits per second. That's almost a giveaway because if you're familiar with the Ethernet standards and the way that they name or number these Ethernet standards, you know that that first number at the beginning is very telling. It can tell you a lot about the speed of that particular standard. And the 100 base TX standard is for what we used to call fast Ethernet. And can you believe at the time it was fast Ethernet? Now it's super slow Ethernet. Now it's 10 times slower than what we would normally see on a gigabit network. But it is definitely 100 base TX stands for 100 megabits per second. Well, that must be the slowest. So the next fastest, if we're going from lowest to highest, would be answer C, one stream of 802.11n. The maximum theoretical throughput you can have of 802.11n is 150 megabits per second. So there is one that becomes pretty useful to fit into the mix of things. And obviously with 802.11n, you can have more streams. You can have up to 4 of these streams for a maximum speed, if you have the right equipment, of 600 megabits per second. So what we're talking a single stream, and a single stream of 802.11n certainly is 150 megabits per second. The next on our list then would be USB 2.0, which now, of course, we consider to be kind of an older technology. But I know a lot of us still plug in our mice, our keyboards into those older USB connections because we don't need a lot of throughput and bandwidth for things like a keyboard or a mouse. We can use the higher speed USB connections for things like transferring information from a flash drive or an external drive, for example. USB 2.0 has a speed of 480 megabits per second or so, plus or minus. I've seen that written as 500, but for the purposes of what we're doing, 480 megabits per second, I think, is a pretty accurate number to use for this. That fits into our third on this list. Now, from 480 megabits per second, we can jump up pretty high. I categorized a cable modem as a maximum of about 100 megabits per second, or 100 gigabits per second, pardon me. One gigabit per second. I'm not sure what I'm doing right now. 1 gigabit per second. In fact, most of the higher end cable modem connections are 1 gig a second. The one that I have here in the studio is 1 gig. The one that I have at home is 1 gig. And there are some cable modem connections that go higher. Obviously, there are lower speeds that you can get on here as well. But 1 gigabit is a pretty good number. And you'll notice with USB 2.0 being 480 and the next one up is 1 gig, I gave you a little bit of room, especially when you consider that the only one left on this list is SATA Revision 3.0. That's our last answer, and it's 6 gigabits per second. Plenty of speed for that. So that's why I felt good putting the cable modem kind of in the 4th place there to be able to do that. Now, the thing that you'll see, especially if you go to an ISP, and some folks in the chat room are mentioning this, cable modems tend to operate over the copper cable television network, the CATV, the cable television that you would be accustomed to seeing. Some organizations are bringing fiber all the way to the house, but even then I'm noticing those fiber ISPs are really only providing consumers with about a 1 gig maximum. I think they're starting to broaden out and give a few more different options. But at that point, probably would not be a cable modem. That would be more of fiber to the house, fiber to the residence. That's one I think, though the numbers are still pretty close to 1 gig. You're certainly not getting up to 6 gig on your fiber to the house unless it's a business. Business is obviously, there's different options available. But I'm glad we didn't mention that here. I just put cable modem. I think it fits pretty well there at the 4th list. You're welcome to tell me where another one of those might fit. If this was USB 3.0, where would it stand in this? USB 3.0, back with that, there's obviously a 3.1 and a 3.2 version at this point, but back in the 3.0 versions, that was a 5 gig a second, so it would fit in between the cable modem and the SATA Revision 3.0 with the 5 gig a second. That is a pretty useful set of things to know. The type of technologies and how fast these technologies go There's not a lot of them you have to memorize on the exam, but it is important to know these, especially if you're in a scenario where somebody says, I need to purchase an external storage drive to transfer terabytes of data from one system to another. What type of connection should I get? Should I get a USB 2.0? Should I get an eSATA connection? You know, you've got some options there. And those are ones, that's a pretty big difference between USB 2.0 or eSATA. Or maybe something simple like telling someone, make sure you get USB 3.x and not 2.x because the speeds are so different between all of those. So these are good values. I know it seems like rote memorization when you're going through all of these standards and interfaces and speeds and you're wondering, why do I need to know all of this? Well, you need to know all of this because you have to have some way to be able to pull these things out and instantly tell somebody and evaluate what the best scenario might be based on what they're trying to do. So that's where it fits very well to have all of these options available. Obviously, you need to be very familiar with these feeds and speeds for the A+ exam. You could possibly get a question like this in the performance-based questions of your exam, and it'd be useful to know that. So if you answered 100 base TX, one stream of 802.11n, USB 2.0, cable modem, and SATA revision 3.0, I think that's a pretty good list from lowest throughput to highest. Hopefully you did pretty well with that. Let's do a multiple choice-based question now. Let's kind of shift gears back to the multiple choice-based world that you may be more comfortable with. I'm certainly more comfortable with those at times. The question asks, a system administrator is concerned about the stability of a server's hard drive. Which of the following would provide the best summary of the drive's health? Would it be UEFI BIOS, Event Viewer, System Information, Task Manager, or SMART? A system administrator is concerned about the stability of a server's hard drive. Which of the following would provide the best summary of the drive's health? Would it be UEFI BIOS, Event Viewer, System Information, Task Manager, or SMART? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. You'll also have the option once you lock it in. Remember what you locked in because it doesn't tell you what your answer is once you lock it in. I don't have control of the service that we use, so remember what you locked in. But of course, no answers in the chat room, no hints in the chat room. We'll figure out the details from there. Hopefully you're familiar with some of these. And I notice, or at least in my studio, I still have a nice mix of SSD and traditional hard drives. So these types of questions can be very important when you're in an environment where you do have still a lot of hard drives out there, mostly for archival and backup storage, or just large amounts of storage. SSD is still relatively expensive, even though the performance is there. But when you need to store tens or hundreds of terabytes or even exabytes of data, you can't afford always to put SSD for all of those. So it's very nice to have the option to have some hard drives, which are less expensive, a lot more storage. And if you've got it in a NAS or a SAN, it may be the better choice. So it's useful to know how to check the stability of that hard drive. Maybe one of these questions can help you understand what some of those might be. Let's see how you did with this question. A system administrator is concerned about the stability of a server's hard drive. Which of the following would provide the best summary of the drive's health? Would that be UEFI BIOS, Event Viewer, System Information, Task Manager, or SMART? And if we look at the results, we can see that 57% of you say the answer is SMART. Was that smart to say that? We'll find out in a moment. 13% of you said System Information, 11% of you said Task Manager, 11% of you said UEFI BIOS, and 9% said Event Viewer, making this almost a four-way tie for second. I think we're going to call it, just say it's close enough that it's a four-way tie for second place. 57% of you saying SMART certainly is one that would lead me to think that SMART would be a good choice. SMART obviously doesn't mean that you are smart. Well, maybe you are, but it means in this context self-monitoring, analysis, and reporting technology. See what they did there? This is something that does help out quite a bit if you are trying to determine how's my drive performing. These are metrics and monitoring that is done on the drive itself. So the drive is effectively self-diagnosing and self-monitoring itself. And you're able to view some of these statistics. Some of these statistics such as a raw read error rate. Maybe you'd like to know the spin up time. Maybe you'd like to understand if there are any, how long has this drive been used? What is the power on hours? It keeps track of how many hours this drive has been in use, and a bunch of other statistics as well. You can sometimes reference these statistics through a third-party utility. Sometimes you can view them in a drive utility that's included with the drive itself. Sometimes the operating system may have access to some of these. And in very large environments, obviously you're monitoring all of your systems and monitoring all of your smart statistics, because sometimes it can give you a heads up that something may be starting to fail. You may want to swap one of those drives out when you're working through them. This is one where the warning signs can be really useful. If you can find these warning signs and identify when this might be happening, it can be really useful to know this. It is really something that if you're looking to figure out what drives should we replace before they fail, these smart statistics would be a great way to determine that. Although smart has to be something that is integrated into the drives that you are using, these days, it's almost on all of the drives you'll find. It's hard to find a hard drive these days that doesn't have the ability to show these smart statistics. So have a look. There's a lot of free utilities and other utilities you can grab. And if you're running a hard drive in your system, you could load up this utility. It will tell you how your drive is performing. And in some cases, give you a heads up. With some BIOS technologies, with some manufacturers, it will analyze the smart statistics every time that system is booted. And if it notices that one of these happens to be getting, especially error messages, happens to be accumulating, then it will tell you this drive may be failing. You may want to consider performing a backup and replacing that drive. These statistics can be extremely useful for you. Have a look at those on your hard drive. It's probably going to help you quite a bit. And that's why in this case, smart is the right answer. You answered eSmart. 57% of you got that one absolutely right. 12% of you said system information. 11% said task manager, and 8% said event viewer, which can provide some information. Event viewer might show you some type of event that could have been caused by something relating to the drive. That's a bit of a stretch, though, isn't it? System information can tell you what drive you have in your system, but it can't really tell you anything about the health of that drive. And then Task Manager, it can provide you with statistics on how applications are performing as they send information in and out of that drive. But again, they're not telling you a lot of detail about why the performance of that drive happens to be that way. So although these might be able to provide you with some information, that wasn't the question. The question asked, which would provide the best summary? And by far, Smart is a fantastic summary for these storage drives. So if you're running hard drives, SSDs, and other types of drives, there's usually some smart technology built into those. UE5 BIOS might have some capability to inform you of drive information, but you would have to reboot. You'd have to go into the BIOS. You'd have to look at those settings and perhaps do that proactively rather than having something that can inform you when those particular errors are occurring. Not the best way to do it either. In this case, Smart, far and above any other options that are available. So if you answered eSmart, you got it absolutely correct. Let's do another one. I've got more here. We've got a question that asks, a technician is building an asset tracking tool for mobile phones. Which of the following would provide a unique identifier for each phone? Would that be a IMEI, PRL, IMSI, CDMA, or PRI? A technician is building an asset tracking tool for mobile phones. Which of the following would provide a unique identifier for each phone? IMEI, PRL, IMSI, CDMA, or PRI? If you think you know the answer, Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA, that URL that is on your screen right there, and lock in your answer. Going to be pretty useful to know what those are. See if you happen to know what the answers are. There's a lot of abbreviations there. All of them seem to have some reference to mobile phones. So this is not quite as easy as you might think. We have to be able to break these down, figure out the details of this. And if you do, each one of these is a real thing. If you're going through this list and you don't know what one of those abbreviations is, make a note. You want to go back and look at your exam objectives and make sure you're familiar with those. We have plenty to go through here. I had some drives fail recently, or a drive fail recently on my NAS. I was looking at the smart stats. I was looking at the information, sort of failed out of nowhere. There's all kinds of studies available on the internet you can pull down from organizations that are providers, service providers, and they have tons of systems with tons of drives. It's interesting the metrics and the information they're able to find. And they can give you information on if you see a drive doing this, it's probably going to fail sometime in the next amount of X number of months or X number of days. Quite remarkable what they're able to do if you have the right statistics and you gather them all and start performing some analysis of those. So that last question about smart can actually have a broader effect, a broader set of knowledge that you can bring to the table if you're collecting that data. This one more about mobile phones. And if you are a mobile phone person, if you're in charge of managing the mobile phones in your organization, you're in charge of handling all of the overhead and configurations of your mobile devices, this might be one you already know. Let's see how well you did with this one. A technician is building an asset tracking tool for mobile phones. Which of the following would provide a unique identifier for each phone? Would that be an IMEI, a PRL, IMSI, CDMA, or PRI? Let's see how you answered this one. 88% of you said IMEI. That's a pretty strong answer. We have 6% that said IMSI, and then 3% said PRI, 2% said CDMA, and 1% said PRL. So IMEI is kind of what everybody went with on this one, and I think that's because that's exactly what the right answer is. IMEI is the International Mobile Station Equipment Identity. Just the name itself explains exactly what it is. It is a unique value for this particular mobile device. The IMEI on your phone is different than the IMEI on any other phone that's out there. So this is how you're able to really take and qualify exactly what device that happens to be. It can't be any other device that's out there. The IMEI really does identify a specific physical phone or mobile device. If you're one who's in charge of handling all of your mobile devices, you're probably very familiar with the IMEIs. There's other options here, of course. There's the IMSI. 6% of you chose the IMSI. IMSI is specific to the subscriber on that particular system, the International Mobile Subscriber Identity, where the user that is on that mobile network is identified. Usually that's often provisioned in the SIM card. So if you move the SIM from one device to another, you can effectively move your rights and permissions on that mobile provider's network. And that's why you probably would not want to use an IMSI if you're trying to uniquely identify a physical device, because you can pop out a SIM, put it in another device, and now it's a different device that is associated with that IMSI. So that's definitely not the right answer. We got CDMA, which is a type of mobile technology. It is not a way to track a device, or at least not a unique way to have a device tracked. And the PRL and the PRIs are used for updating of information on your phone, often over the air. Whenever you're doing any type of mobile updates, for example, you'll be doing PRL for your preferred roaming list, and you'd be using PRI as product release instructions, which doesn't really say what it is, but it's really setting up radio settings and identify other things on the local network. All of these are updated OTA, over the air, to be able to do this. IMEI was the right answer, though. That's the one we were looking for, being able to identify a unique identifier for each phone. Clearly, 87% of you knew exactly what that was. So your IMEI was that very specific asset for tracking that device. Now, we've already seen, just in the questions we've done, we've dealt with cloud-based technologies, hard drive technologies, mobile device technologies. There's so much to these A+ exams. And if you've been looking at my videos, you know there are 137 A+ videos in my library, over 18, almost 18 and a half hours of systems here. This is one where I think it becomes almost very challenging to get your arms around everything you need to know for this exam. There's just so much. It's a very broad exam. And so it helps if you have some way to take all of that information from 137 videos and collapse it down into one single tool. And this is my A+ course notes. It's a way that you could have everything in one place. This is a set of my A+ course notes, and everything is in my videos, all the text, all the graphics, all the important charts that I've created, everything in there are in these course notes. It is a single consolidated tool of all of the important information from my videos. It's a great way to have everything in one place. Once you've watched the videos, once you've read your book, it would be nice if you had something that could summarize everything in one consolidated form. Those are my A+ course notes. And if you purchase my course notes along with my practice exams, you get a little break on the price as well. It becomes very useful to have. You want to know more information about those, head out to my website, professormesser.com/1001notes, and have a look at those. Some folks in the chat room already mentioning they have the course notes. Thank you for your support. They're saying it was a good buy. I appreciate that. Because those course notes are awesome in the chat room. Thank you so much. They are very useful if you're someone who wants to really consolidate. Find out more, professormesser.com/1001notes. Let's do another question, shall we? This next question asks, that technician, he's busy. He needs to create a pinout of a serial cable. Which of the following tools would be the best choice for this task? Would it be a crimper, an inductive probe, a punch-down tool, a multimeter, or a tone generator? A technician needs to create a pinout of a serial cable. Which of the following tools would be the best choice for this task? Is it a crimper, an inductive probe, a punch-down tool, a multimeter, or a tone generator? If you think you know the answer, let me put the link up. That would be useful. professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer right there. See if you know. All of these are tools that are listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. You should know what these tools do. You don't necessarily need to know the details of how to use every single one of these or be proficient in using every single one of these. But if someone pulled out a crimper or an inductive probe or a punch-down tool or a multimeter or a tone generator, you should be able to tell, oh, they've got this and they're using this tool to be able to perform this function. That's the type of thing you'll need to know. Very similar to the question we had here, where someone needs to create a pinout of a serial cable. And you need to know what the best tool would be to be able to do that. Kind of in reverse for that one, being able to break these out. See if you happen to know what they are. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We will figure these out, break these down the way you would expect to be able to break these out. Let's see how you do with these. We've got a number of folks that have answered. Let's see how you did with this question. A technician needs to create a pinout of a serial cable. Which of the following tools would be the best choice for this task? Is it a crimper, an inductive probe, a punch-down tool, a multimeter, or a tone generator? 40% of you, 40, say it's a crimper is what you would use. 28% of you say it's a punch-down tool. 18% said multimeter. 11% said inductive probe. And 2% said tone generator. So this is an interesting one in that, in fact, the number one answer, 42% of you, crimper, not the right answer. The second most popular answer, 27% of you, punch-down tool, not the right answer. Well, this doesn't happen very often. So what would you use to create a pinout of a serial cable? Creating a pinout means that you're looking at the pins on one side of the cable and you're mapping where this connects on the other side of the cable. You need to have something that can give you some type of continuity so that if you're hitting a pin on this side, you know which pin it happens to be on the other side. And the thing that's going to provide you with that continuity is a multimeter. A multimeter, we often think of being able to look at voltage, AC voltage from your power source, DC voltage from a battery or other type of DC source. But you can also use it for continuity. If you want to see if a fuse is correct, a fuse is still working, you can put the meter on one side of the fuse and the other side of the fuse and see if you hear the beeping noise. See if you have continuity, which means it's continuous between those two. Maybe you'd like to see if a cable or a set of copper has continuity. There's no split in the middle. Or if you happen to have a cable that you don't know the inside of this cable and how it's mapped out, you could put the multimeter on one pin on one side and then just move the connector of the multimeter to every other pin on the other side until it beeps, and then you know where the continuity is between those two sides. Multimeter becomes extremely useful for those mystery cables, those unknown connections that you might be using. And in this case, 20% of you answered D, multimeter. That is the correct tool for this particular task. You need to create a pinout of a serial cable. That's the best way to do it. 39% of you said crimper. A crimper obviously is very common to use if you are wanting to put a connector onto the end of a cable, whether it's a coax, whether it's a twisted pair. There are all these different types of crimpers available. And in this case, a crimper will connect that to the end of the cable, put that connector right on, but it doesn't tell you what the pinout is. That doesn't help you at all. It's up to you to put the right pinouts in because you're the one who's actually doing the crimping, but it doesn't tell you what the pinouts happen to be. 26% of you said a punch down tool. Punch down tool, very useful if you're punching down things like a twisted pair cable into a punch down block, but the punch down tool doesn't help you create a pinout of a serial cable. It only helps you connect wires into a punch down block. That's all it does. It's almost like a hammer, where it's just putting those wires into that punch down block. It's almost as loud as a hammer too when you're using it. You've also got other answers on here that we chose. 10% of you chose an inductive probe. 3% of you chose a tone generator. Commonly, the probe and tone generator are used together. You put the tone generator on one side of the wire, and then you use the inductive probe to find the other side of the wire. That's for everything in the wire. It doesn't tell you what wires within that cable are connected to what pins, however. It only tells you where that wire happens to be in this big ball of wires that might be in your wiring closet. So it would not be an inductive probe or tone generator either. The best answer, the only answer here that works best for finding a pinout is a multimeter. 21% of you chose multimeter. Answer D is the right answer. Well, some of you didn't like pinout. You didn't like that I'm creating a pinout, but that's what it is. That's what it's called. That's what we do with it. And I think if you're planning on understanding the tools from the exam, it'd be really useful to you to understand how you would take advantage of these. And in my particular case, I even do the wire map and the pinouts specific in there. That's a very common use for a multimeter. Something very useful. Let's do another question. We can bounce back from this. We got one we'll do much better on. Here we go. This question asks, an administrator has configured a drive array to duplicate all data between two physical drives. Which RAID type is most likely in use? Would it be RAID 1 plus 0, RAID 5, RAID 0, or RAID 1? An administrator has configured a drive array to duplicate all data between two physical drives. Which RAID type is most likely in use? Is it RAID 1 plus 0, RAID 5, RAID 0, or RAID 1? See how you do with this one. If you think you know the answer, go to that link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. When you're creating there's a lot of confusion in the chat room. When you're creating a pinout, you're creating a wire map. You're creating a listing of what pins are connected to what pins. This is something you get with Ethernet. Somebody hands you a cable and it has Ethernet on both sides. Sometimes you can just look at the two ends of the RJ45 and you can manually determine what the pinouts are between that. And you can see, oh yeah, pin 1 is connected to pin 1, pin 2 to pin 2, pin 3 to pin 3, or whatever. Or it might be wired differently. It might be wired as a crossover, so you need to determine the pinouts between those two. But you also see that a lot with serial cables, or just a cable that's been handed to you. On one side of the cable is a 9-pin connector. On the other end of the cable is an RJ45 connector. What is this cable? Well, one of the ways you could determine what the cable happens to be is you can grab a multimeter and figure out the pinouts. I think it'd be a great way to do this. Now, what goes across those pins? What information what are those pins used for? What is wire 1 used for? What is wire 2 used for? What is wire 3 used for? You don't know that yet, but that wasn't the question. We were just trying to figure out what pin and pin 1, where does that connect on the other end of the cable? That's what a pinout is going to do. Multimeters are fantastic for that. They'll solve those problems very quickly for you if you're ever working through those. And if you're in a chance where you don't have a multimeter today, go grab a multimeter. Go get a multimeter. They're relatively inexpensive, and they're incredibly useful. They come in handy all the time. I'm constantly grabbing mine to check different things. Oh, is that outlet working properly? Is this power supply providing the right amount of DC voltage? Am I getting any signal across this wire? How is this wire configured? Those are great to use. Make sure you're familiar with those. Let's see how you did on this question, though. We're shifting gears from our pinouts and looking at a drive array. The question asked, an administrator has configured a drive array to duplicate all data between two physical drives. Which RAID type is most likely in use? Is it RAID 1 plus 0, RAID 5, RAID 0, or RAID 1? And you can see 63% of you say RAID 1. We'll have to see if that's the case because we have almost a 3-way tie for second place between the 15% for RAID 0, the 13% for RAID 5, the 10% for RAID 1 plus 0. So if you've got two drives, both of those drives are duplicating the data. They have an exact duplicate of each other. Then you have a mirror. It's a mirror image of each other. And a mirrored array, especially in RAID, is RAID 1. RAID 1 is a mirror. The mirror of RAID 1, you're taking and duplicating these file blocks across both drives. So if you have block 1 on disk 0, you'll notice you have exactly the same block 1 on disk 1. If you have block 2 on disk 0, you have exactly the same block 2 on disk 1. Obviously, the benefits of this are that if you lose a physical drive, if suddenly this drive, all the magic smoke comes out, and now this drive no longer functions, well, it's okay. You have an exact duplicate of everything on disk 1. You'll still be up and running. You'll still be working the way you would expect to be working. Everything is doing exactly what you would expect. And you have time now to replace the bad drive and resync everything over into that new drive that you replaced it with so that you can then have the redundancy back in place. You want to do that quickly because you don't want to lose the redundant drive as well. At that point, the whole system is not available. Now, of course, if you're working through this, you need to, of course, be familiar with all of the different ways to replace it for your RAID array. And of course, you've already got a backup, right? Because RAID is not backup. RAID is redundancy. RAID is a way to keep everything up and running the way so that you don't lose any time on the system. But it doesn't keep backups. So you want to have a backup of these. That way, if you happen to lose disk 0, and then in the process of replacing that drive, suddenly disk 1 fails, you've still got somewhere to go to grab your data. Although obviously downtime would be a big issue with that. So in this case, RAID 1 is the right answer. 64% of you chose RAID 1. And why wouldn't you? That's exactly what a mirror would be, that is duplicating all data between two physical drives. Now we have other RAID types in here. RAID 0, for example, is what we call striping, where we're putting a little bit of data on one drive and then we're putting a little bit of other type of data on another drive. We're splitting the data between both of those. So RAID 0 would not be a good choice there. We're splitting the data, not duplicating the data. RAID 5 is simply a stripe of data with some parity stuck on it. So that's not going to be a duplicate between two physical drives. And RAID 1 plus 0 is a mixture of parity and mirroring. Not what we would use in this case either. When you only have two drives and you're duplicating everything between two physical drives, you're definitely looking at a RAID 1 configuration. If you answer D, RAID 1, you got that one absolutely correct. If you've been watching this video for continuing education unit credit, you'll want to follow these instructions to receive an email from me that certifies that you are here watching this video so that you can earn 1 hour of a continuing education unit credit that is specific to a webinar category. It's a lot, isn't it? Here's the process. Make sure you follow these steps to be able to earn the email with that certification inside. You want to go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There is a Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, it'll bring up a form. Put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put January 2022 Core 1 or something like that so I know what study group this came from. And then in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month, pin out. Super secret code word of the month is pin out. Put that into the body of the message. And if you are wanting to put anything else in there, I read through every single one of these. So if you want to put anything else in that message, you're more than welcome to. Unfortunately, I'm not able to respond back with all of these. I get quite a few in my inbox, but it's a great way to be able to put in a little message that I'm able to read as we go through. And I love reading them too. So feel free to do that. But if you don't want to, that's fine too. Just go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link, put your name, your email address in the subject line, put January 2022 Core 1, and simply put the word pin out. I'll know what to do. I got it from there. I'll make sure you get a copy of that. Usually it takes me about a week to turn these around and get back to you. It's a great way to earn some CEUs if you're someone who's earning CEUs to renew your certification. I realize not everyone is doing that these days, but it's another great way to earn some additional information, an additional CEU that you might be able to use. You can only collect so many webinar category CEUs. You can't collect 20 of them to renew your certification. I think for A+, you might only be able to collect 3, like a small number in that 3-year cycle. So it's not something that you can use to cover all of the CEUs, but it might help you for what you're doing. Let's do another question. I've got one before we hit the top of the hour. This question asks, a company has installed a large multi-terabyte drive array, and available drive space is used when deploying cloud servers. Which of the following would describe this cloud characteristic? Would it be rapid elasticity, pooling, non-metered, hybrid, or measured service? A company has installed a large multi-terabyte drive array, and available drive space is used when deploying cloud servers. Which of the following would describe this cloud characteristic? Is it rapid elasticity, pooling, non-metered, hybrid, or measured service? You think you know the answer? Go to professormesser.com/QA right there. Lock in what you think the answer is. You knew there would be a cloud question coming up, right? We got to fit one of those into the study group. We got a couple into the study group this time, didn't we? Because last month's rewind was a cloud question, wasn't it? So we got a couple in there. I always find that interesting with the cloud questions, really on the exam itself, is that there's an entire section for the cloud that is, what, 20-something%, just under that. And when you have that many, that large of a number for the cloud, it seems like it's almost overwhelming because there's not a lot of exam objective bullets on the exam objectives. So we tend to put a lot of information in here. We almost cover everything associated with that cloud section on the exam. it's hard not to include most of what's there because there's just so little amount of it to be able to have that available. Let's see how we do. With this one, in dealing with cloud systems, it's helpful to understand the entire process. So make sure you have a look through this question, kind of understand what it's asking, where it's coming from, what it's trying to get across to you, and see if you can recognize what the cloud characteristic might be. Obviously, on the exam, there's quite a few characteristics you have to know. Every single one of the options for the answers here are part of the exam objectives. So if there are any of these you don't recognize, make sure you make a note. So you can go back and have a look at what those objectives might be as you step through them. It becomes handy to be familiar with those. You never know in the exam what the question is going to be about. Obviously, they can't cover every single bullet from the exam objectives on the actual exam. So you sort of have to know what all of these are just in case they happen to come up. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, a company has installed a large multi-terabyte drive array and available drive space is used when deploying cloud servers. Which of the following would describe this cloud characteristic? Is it rapid elasticity, pooling, non-metered, hybrid, or measured service? We're a little bit torn on this one. Almost a two-way tie for first place between pooling at 34% and rapid elasticity at 34%. That's quite a bit of a comparison between those two. We're going to have to figure that out because it drops off pretty well from there. 17% for hybrid, 11% for measured service, and only 4% said non-metered for this. So you've got some options of what these might be. So in this case, we've got this big array, and whenever we build out a server, instead of buying new drives, instead of buying additional storage, you simply carve out of those drives some space that might be available and associate that space with your cloud server. The way that you would focus on this, or the way that you would sort of identify this, is by you've got this big, enormous group to pull from. You do the same thing, by the way, with memory. You can do the same thing with other resources on that primary server, but you've effectively got this enormous pool of resources available, this big multi-terabyte array. And then as you build out servers, you'll just carve out a little bit of information and associate that particular area of the drive just for that particular cloud-based server. This resource pooling becomes incredibly useful because now you don't have to purchase individual components for these different servers, and you can resize these as you go. Maybe when you first created it, you applied a very large partition to this particular server, but then as you've used the server, you realize, I don't really need that much space. You can shrink the partition and put the rest of that back into the pool for someone else to be able to use. Or maybe it worked the other way. You built the server out, and then you realized, wow, I need twice as much storage space. Let's build the partition now. Let's extend it and expand it to be twice the size. We're going to pull some more information in from the pool, whatever happens to be available, and associate that with that particular server. This resource pooling is an incredibly important characteristic when we're talking about cloud services. It's what allows us to do everything else with these cloud services very easily. And that's why in this case, it would be the correct answer. Answer B, if we're allocating space from that array to an existing cloud server, we would be pooling that cloud server. Now, we had pretty much a tie for first, where rapid elasticity was, as many people answered that one as the correct answer, pooling. Rapid elasticity is also an important characteristic of cloud computing, but it's one where servers are deployed automatically when a particular thing happens. Very commonly, if you are during a busy time and suddenly a lot of people hit your website, you can have your background automated deployment services create new servers, deploy them automatically, allocate space and CPU, and get the programs running, get it all up and running, and suddenly those new resources are available for people. It all happens automatically. Nobody has to manually push a button. It's something that occurs because the system recognizes that it's under a heavy load. And then as everybody goes away or goes to sleep or does something else and the load goes down, those servers can be disconnected, reallocated, and put back into the pool. That is what rapid elasticity is. It's a way to very quickly build and tear down these particular application instances. Rapid elasticity, though, being important, doesn't describe the process of allocating drive space from a particular large collection. That really is pooling that best fits that particular definition. And that's why in this case, answer B, pooling, 35% of you got that one absolutely correct. Now, there are others that chose options in here. Hybrid, for example, is usually associated with a cloud computing infrastructure where you might have some private cloud, you might have some public cloud, you might be using both of those. That would be a hybrid scenario. Doesn't really describe allocating drive space. It's more of allocation of what types of services you are using. You would have a measured service where you are measuring how much of that service you are using. Usually this is done so you can bill back for someone's measurement. For example, if you were on the Professor Messer website, you purchase some products, you download those products, they're stored at a cloud server. That cloud server then bills me every month for storing that information there and making it available to you. A non-metered service is one where there's no type of measurement that you would use. Usually this is something where it's a flat fee every month for using that particular service. But of course, that doesn't describe the process of allocating space from a larger drive array either. In this case, the only one that really makes sense is answer B, pooling. 35% of you got that one absolutely right. The cloud computing is, as I mentioned, not an enormous section of the exam, but certainly one you should be familiar with. And the best way you can become familiar with it is going back and looking at the objectives. Go to professormesser.com/objectives. There's a link there that will take you over to the CompTIA website, or you can simply go to your favorite search engine and type CompTIA Exam Objectives. It will take you right to the page. They're a great checklist, by the way. They're actually a fantastic checklist. They will tell you everything you need to know for the exam. They will break down for you every little thing. So I'll bring up the set of exam objectives I have here on my screen. Here is the objectives. Let's see if I can make these full screen for you. Here's my set of objectives. So in fact, you can see virtualization and cloud computing, 12% of the exam. So those 2 questions or 3 questions we had today, obviously we can cram a lot in when it's only 12% of the exam. But here are the objectives. Look how much information is on these. Just tons of detail. This is only section 1 for mobile devices. Let's see another page of it. Section 2 for networking. Section 3 for hardware, which keeps going for another 2 pages. Section 4 for cloud computing. 12% of the exam. Look how many few bullets there happens to be for cloud computing. Not a lot there. That's why we tend to get a lot of questions on our exam about that. And then hardware and network troubleshooting, quite a few sections on that. So if you can go through each one of those bullets and you can cross through those bullets and say, I know what that is, I know what that is, I know what that is, and you can explain it to someone, you're ready for the exam. That's what I usually will tell people. If you're trying to figure it out, am I ready for this exam? Am I not ready for this exam? It's the objectives that are going to tell you. Go to professormesser.com/objectives. You can download those, have them available as well. We do one of these study groups every month for the Core 1 exam. We also do one every month for Core 2. We do one for Network Plus. We do one for Security Plus. You can check back on Thursday. We've got one on January the 6th for the Core 2. And then in February, I have at least put on the calendar for February 8th and February 10th to be able to have some more study groups available. These times, they can change. These days change. These times change. You never know what's going to happen with the chaos that is my life. So one of the best things you can do is to always check in with the calendar. It's on the Professor Messer website at the top. Click the link that says calendar, or simply visit professormesser.com/calendar. Well, can you believe it is over already? We went through an entire hour and went through a good set of different questions from many different areas of the exam objectives. Don't forget about the already discounted vouchers on the Professor Messer website. You can find that at professormesser.com/vouchers. We've also got practice exams, course notes, and so much more on the website that can help you with your studies. And of course, don't forget about on Twitter, subscribing to our page. If you liked this study group, I would love for you to be able to click that thumbs up button to say you really liked what you got here today. Also, don't forget about your daily pop quiz questions. We put them on Twitter and on Instagram. Might be a good way to go through this and have a better understanding of what might be asked of you on the exam and what type or style of questions you might run into. This might help you as well. Well, stick around. I like to take questions from the chat room in the after show, but this ends our interactive part of the study group. We're so glad that you were here. Stick around for the after show. We'll see you next time on the A+ study group. So let me flip around. I need to move some things around on my screen with the lower thirds. I will be taking questions from the chat room. So if you are watching this live and you are in the chat room, this would be the chat room that is either on my site at professormesser.com/live, or it is the YouTube chat that you may be already seeing on your screen if you're on YouTube. This is a great place to go because I am just watching the questions go by. We've done a lot of questions already, but this is a great time where instead of me asking you questions, you can ask me questions. And we'll kind of bring it around the other side to figure out these details. And a lot of you did extremely well with this set of questions we had today. You notice there's quite a mix, so make sure you're familiar with all of those. The question that we just had, that some folks are even asking, so what was the answer to that one we just did? What a good question. Because when we had that tie, that tie for first place on the two of these. Oh, I've got it right here. Here we go. We'll bring it up. There it is. Nope, that's not it. That's it. There we go. So we've got the tie for first. It was pooling. Answer B, pooling was the right answer for the pool, which is why there's a picture of a pool on the slide. How does he do that? Well, there it is. Now you know. If you are trying to figure out the details of this, it is pooling to be able to do that. So let's go to the chat room. We'll see if we can first let me address the $10 super chat from Kingpin Ronan. That is there. Thank you. And not even a message in there, no questions in there, just Kingpin Ronan showing the love. Thank you for the super chat. You were the first super chat of the year. So thank you. Thank you for that. We appreciate it. All of this kind of helps keep things going here. I like to be able to at least give you some content that you can use to help learn these certifications. And during the beginning of the year, we're all interested in getting certified. So it's great to see everybody here and what we're doing. Some more questions in the chat room. A lot of questions from Gregory's asked, do I do Q&As for CySA Plus? Currently, if you go to my website, you'll see A+, Network Plus, Security Plus. There's not a lot. There's nothing else yet. Certainly, some of my plans for 2022, as I've mentioned in other study groups, are that I want to have some additional training options, some additional things available. We haven't technically decided exactly what that will be yet. I have a pretty good idea. I don't know if it's going to be CISSO Plus or not, so we're just going to have to wait and see. I change my mind every day. So whatever I told you today would be wrong anyway. Right now, I'm in the process of updating the A+ content. As I mentioned, sometime this year, there will be new A+ exams, so there has to be new A+ exam content for that. And I rebuild everything from scratch every time we do this. So it's a little time consuming, but I think it turns out to be a little bit better for what people are using. Is this on Discord? I guess Jordan's asking if this is on Discord. Are you assuming the text, the chat? Is that what you're referring to? Or you mean the video or the live stream? The answer in both of these cases is no. For the purposes of making this easier for me, I focus on the chat room from YouTube as our Q&A, and I don't multi-stream it out to Discord. It's annoying enough to have it in one place for you. We don't need, I think most people can probably make it over to YouTube to watch and listen in and participate. So that usually helps a bit as well. Ed in the chat room bought the base 220-1001 study materials. Thank you, Ed. We appreciate it. Wondering if I can upgrade to get access to the audio and other content for the difference in cost. Absolutely. And it may be that what you're trying to do is already available to you. You can log into your member account. Just click the member link at the top of the Professor Messer website, log in with your credentials, and there's an upgrade link next to what you've already purchased. And that upgrade link allows you to upgrade to get things like the audio or the success bundle without having to repurchase the other things you've already done. So it's a difference. The discount is already applied in that upgrade link. So that might be an easy way to do it. So have a look on your link. If it's not there or you're not finding the upgrade link you would like, just open a help desk ticket. I see every single one of those. So when you open that help desk ticket, I can provide you with a customized upgrade for whatever you're trying to do, because there's no reason you would have to buy it twice. You can buy it once and then upgrade it as you go. That's a much better way to do it, I think. Savik Ray in the chat room with $5 super chat. Even though it's Canadian, we count Canadian here. Mrs. Professor Messer is sort of Canadian. She's not technically Canadian, but her mom and dad were Canadian. How does that work? But that's one of those where always happy to hear from our folks up north. Savik asks, is it possible to prepare a Core 1 test in 1 week if you study 0 hours a day? Well, you can prepare anything if you study 0 hours a day. You won't be preparing very well, I'm afraid. You probably meant to say more than 0, right? Probably 10 hours a day. Yes, I have to scroll down a little bit. Savik says 10 hours a day. The real way to tell, everybody's different. The answer is that everybody's different. My recommendation would be you go to the exam objectives. The exam objectives are a checklist. And if you can go through this entire set of exam objectives and check off every single one of those, you're ready to take the exam. So if that takes you a week, maybe you've already been in the industry a while, you're already familiar with operating systems, you're already familiar with the hardware, you're already familiar with some of the troubleshooting, you know what all these interfaces are, you know what they do, then your studies are probably going to go pretty quickly. And you can start checking those things off pretty well. Other people, like me, take months to go through these things. I have to go very slowly. I like to really understand that entire objective, understand it's solid. So it takes me a long time. So some of us take 6 months to get through an entire exam. So it just depends. It might take you a week if you're already familiar with these things. I would say on average, for most people, the average for those folks is usually somewhere around 2 to 3 months of study. I would say that's a guess, but I think that's a pretty good average for what people are doing. So if you're someone who you're studying for these exams, you're trying to get through it as quickly as possible, I say go straight to the exam objectives. This is what's really going to help you understand where you need to focus your efforts, because a lot of these you may already know. A lot of these may be already common to what you're familiar with. Go to this, use it as a checklist, and I think it'll tell you how fast. And if you go through a week of this and you've already spent all that time on a week and you only got as far as section 1.7, you may think, wow, okay, it took me a week to get through all of this. And I still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pages left of the exam objectives. That means 9 more weeks, we could say, or some number around that. So that should give you some feel for it anyway. I think that would help in your studies if you understood exactly what you would be running into. It's just hard to say because everyone's different. Back to the chat room. Mike John, the chat room, $2 super chat. Mike says, thanks for doing what you do. Well, thanks for the super chat. We appreciate that. We thanks for visiting. Thanks for being on the site. Thanks for your support. Everything. I get these questions and comments from you from everyone all the time in my inbox and on Discord and during the live stream. All of it is so monumentally important to keeping me motivated. So I love during the things we're doing right now where it's a live stream, and then after the stream, I'm putting together more content. So it's exciting when a new course is being created. So, but sometimes you're in the middle of it and you're thinking, oh, there's a lot we still have to get through. And it's comments like that that really help us quite a bit. So thank you for that motivation. It always helps. It's always nice to have someone behind you. No, keep going. Let me push you a little bit. We'll keep you on that and go where you're going. In fact, up in the chat room, I get this comment quite a bit. Not necessarily up says, I've been listening to the study groups every day while delivering pizza. This is the things I used to do. I used to travel a lot in my car. And so I was trying to get as much information as possible while I am getting that windshield time, because obviously you can't read, you can't watch a video. You have to have some way to get this information in your brain, which is one of the reasons I put all the study groups out as podcast format. I think that gets it into the hands of as many people as possible. So maybe that will help you as well. But I'm glad to hear that you're working on the practice exams and working through, as we always say, getting a job or getting a better job. And IT is one of those where once you get your foot in the door and get that first job, now the sky's the limit. Now just figure out what you want to do. It's up to you. You have so many options inside of IT. So keep doing what you're doing. If you're spending your time delivering pizza, trying to better yourself, that can only be a good thing. So keep doing that. More questions. Jay Millie in the chat room, $4.99 super chat. Thank you for your support, Jay. Jay writes, should I try to get the A+ certification before the new exam or wait? What new exam is my answer? There is no new exam. So, well, there will be. Obviously, at some point, there will be a new exam. But let's take someone who today has started working on their A+ certification. And we know based on history that the current set of exams will remain available until July. I think it'll probably be after that. But that's just all of this is just guessing, but it's a pretty educated guess at this point that you will have at least until July. So you've got 6 months or so to work on these two exams. That's plenty of time. So if you're somebody who is working right now, you'll be able to finish up both of those exams, have the certification in your pocket, and go out and get the job at least between now and July. Now, what if you're someone else who says, well, I want the latest exam. I want the newest information, even though there's no books available, there's no videos available, there's no practice exams available, there's nothing out there for this exam. We don't even know when it's going to be released. We don't know when we'll have information to learn from. It could be July before we even see books available for this newer version. So when you start looking at that, if you start studying in July, you'll probably finish by December, maybe before, but let's give it the same amount of time. Let's give it 6 months. So by the time someone right now is studying, they've already got their job in July, August, and they're way ahead of you because you aren't certified yet. Getting that certification in your pocket is valuable. Why would you wait to get certified? You're simply putting yourself at a disadvantage. Whether you take an exam that's available now or whether you take a new exam, you earn exactly the same cert. You're not earning a newer cert. There is no newer cert. The certification itself is timeless. It doesn't have a version. There's no qualification to it. It's simply the A+ certification. So earning that certification now and putting it in your pocket is exactly the same qualifying thing, a certification as getting it in December. So why would you wait? It simply puts you at a disadvantage. Never wait to get certified. Never, never, never wait to get certified. Go out and get that exam right now. That is so important. And that's why I would tell people, make sure you're studying, take this exam. You will hear other people when a new exam is released, they'll tell you, drop everything and go to the new exam. And I always tell people, what are you going to study from? There's no books, there's limited videos, limited everything. You're at a disadvantage. You should work to pass the easiest way possible, the one that is most advantageous to you, the one that the most information is available. And this current exam is certainly the one. In fact, most of the time I tell people, if you have a way to take this exam until it's retired, that's the one you should take. So much better. There's a much better chance of you passing that exam if you do that. Also in the chat room, super chat from MCB Blackheart, the visual musician. You got a lot going on, MCP. With the $5 super chat, though, thank you so much for your support. MCP writes, I passed my A+ 220 1001 in October and 1002 last month, 9 days after your last study group. Congratulations on your new A+ certification. Fantastic news. This is great. And just before the end of the year, that had to be a great new year, right? I just want to say thanks for the free study groups. Well, you're welcome. And thank you for being here. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you for your support. Congratulations on your A+. I'd also love to know what your next step would be. Where do you want to go with this? Where's the path for you? What are you trying to do? Are we going to get a job with this? Do we want to get another certification? What is that certification going to be? I'd love to hear the stories. So let me know. Let's do another question from the chat room. Got a lot here. There are a lot of people in the chat room. I agree. We've got lots of people that are chiming in. Here's what I think. Here's what we do. Here's the time it took for me. So if you're someone who is listening to this on the podcast, if you go back to the video replay that's on YouTube, this chat is also provided in real time during the replay. So that may be something you can grab more information. There's a lot of great detail in the chat room that just kind of slides by that you don't see when you're watching me. So question from Doug. Here's a good question. Here's Doug's question, which says, my plan is Core 1 in March, Core 2 in July. Is that too close to the deadline? And we just don't know right now. If I had to guess, if I was a betting man, and what I'm going to tell you right now is completely unsubstantiated. I don't know what the dates are going to be for A+. I don't know when the retirement is going to be. But let's look at what happened last year. So last year, they released a new Security Plus and a new Network Plus. When they released that new Security Plus and Network Plus, they were a little bit late getting that out because there was a pandemic going on. It was difficult to kind of get everyone's resources together. We lost some time. But we finally got it together and got a Security Plus out. They gave us a 9-month, or was it a year? It was a long time. It was like 9 months to a year of an overlap for those two exams. That's a nice, healthy overlap. That means, let's say they release a new set of A+ exams in March, or February, March. You've got now 9 months, August, September, October timeframe before these exams would go away. So it may be that they do that, or maybe they give us 6 months, or maybe they give us less. We don't know yet. But I'm thinking, given the way the world is going right now, maybe they'll extend this out the same way they did Security Plus and the same way they did Network Plus. So I think if your plan is Core 1 in March and Core 2 in July, as we sit here in January, I think you're okay. Now, next month, maybe we'll have more information. So keep checking back on the CompTIA website. That's the best place to go for the official dates and times. Don't listen to me. What do I know? Go to the source. They'll tell us. And as soon as you see it change, make sure you tell me too, so that I know the instant they change it. Sometimes I'm the last one to know. But you folks are really good at sending me the emails. Hey, I just saw it. It's updated. There it is. And then I can update it as well. So another good one. So another question, William asks, where can I find the exam objectives that I show? Those objectives, there they are. Where'd you get those from? They're directly from the CompTIA website. You can type in CompTIA exam objectives into your favorite search engine, or you can visit my site, professormesser.com/objectives. What could be easier? Great way to get your hands on objectives. And they're free, all free, which is the best part. Well, second to best part. The good part is that everything's in there. If you know everything in these objectives, you've checked off every single one of these bullets, you're going to crush the exam. You will kill it. It'll be awesome. You're not going to have a problem at all. It's people that go into the exam having never looked at these that sometimes can struggle. So I don't think the new objectives are out yet. I don't think they're on the CompTIA website quite yet. But when they are, we will know. We'll have more information to go through. Chris D. Gamer. Is that your real name, Chris? $5 super chat. Thank you so much for your support. Chris writes, hi, thank you for all the help in preparing me for the Intel 007 Network Plus in 2 days. I'll be back for Security Plus soon. Also, Happy New Year's all. Thanks, Chris. You're working on that Network Plus. I guess the same thing applies. If I had to tell someone I've got a week left, I've got a few days left before taking the exam, what is the best way to study? Go back to the exam objectives. It's your checklist. Start checking it off. And if you run across something and you think, I really can't explain this topic to someone else, or I can't explain it to myself in the mirror, let's go study more on that topic. I'll circle it, I'll mark it, I'll color it, and we'll go back and get that one. It's a great last step to be able to go through and know where you need to help with your studies. Just a fantastic resource. So that's what I use. When I make all my videos, I go down the exam objectives. I check off every single one of the objectives as I'm building these videos. It's the only way to study. Make sure you get your hands on those. And best of luck with your Network Plus. And thank you again for the super chat, Chris. We really do appreciate it. Also in the chat room, Lime Mason. Mason with what turns out to be a lime-colored super chat. The $5 super chat. Thanks, Lime. Lime just says, thanks, Teach. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate the support. Thank you for the super chat. Thanks for the comments in the chat room. Thanks for being here. It's another one of those where having the knowledge and being able to sort of talk amongst each other sometimes makes you smarter. You can see what other people are talking about and kind of add to the knowledge you have in this. So thanks for being here and thanks for your super chat, Lime. Other questions in the chat room. Are we still able to do test at home? Yeah, well, that's not going away. Testing at home was rolled out at the beginning of 2020. And as far as CompTIA has said to us, they have said very specifically, this is not going away. We're just going to continue to do this now. People seem to like the ability to have testing at home. There's a good option for both. If I was going to take a test, I've mentioned this earlier, if I was going to go take a certification exam right now, I'd go to a testing center, because setting up my desk to have all the things here that need to be set up properly, I've got to clean off the desk, I've got to get rid of a number of these monitors. This is not a great testing environment. And then I have to worry that sometime during the test, what if the test crashes? What if I lose my internet? Too much stress for me. That just brings my anxiety level up. I don't want anxiety when I'm taking a certification exam. So I'm going to go to a testing center where everything seems to go as smoothly as possible there. You check in, here's your ID, they sit you down, they start the test, and then you can run through it. And when you're done, you get up and walk out, and you're finished. You don't have to worry about, am I in a testing center? Do I have my hand in front of my face and they're going to complain that I did that? Or in some cases, other people have accidentally walked into the room, said, oh, sorry, you're testing, and then walked out again, and they failed them because that's against the rules. Can't have somebody walking in. Or they think you're out of frame. They think, oh, you're over here. Oh, we saw you got a frame. Oh, you just failed. Oh, you just failed your exam. What? Wait, I couldn't see the screen. Nope, just failed because you were there. Those are the types of sort of non-conducive to understanding, non-conducive to taking an exam that I just can't do it. So I prefer going to a testing center. Now, what if, though, I lived an hour from a testing center through bad traffic? The testing center wasn't so great. The systems were old and the screens are little, and it's not even a good environment to test in, okay, I'll do it at home. That's a much better idea, is for me to do my test at home. So you've got the choice. When you buy your voucher and you are ready to schedule your exam, that voucher can be used for either testing in a testing center or testing in your house. You get to choose. So find the one that works best for you. Some people love doing the testing at home. Some people hate doing the testing at home. Some people love going to a testing center. Some people hate going to a testing center. Now do the one you like. Do the one that makes sense for you. Why would you push that? And the fact they have the option available is great. The fact that you can even do it at home and not have to leave, that's valuable stuff. You get to decide which one you're working through. Whenever I start going through the options, everybody's a little different. I was having this conversation with somebody earlier last week, and they said, I don't know why you'd leave your house. Just do it at home. I would say, my response is, I don't know why you would do it at home. Why would you put yourself through that? Because we both have different requirements. We both have different values associated with leaving the house or staying in the house. So completely up to you. You have the choice and it doesn't matter. Just the way to make it happen. What should I do first to begin studying for the A+ exam? Sony asked that in the chat room. I'd say watch my first video of my course. That first video is about what the exams are about, what's covered on the exams, good ways to study, what these videos are about. They kind of give you an overview of the testing process. They're a great way to kind of understand why you would want to take the A+ certification and how that might help you. So watch that first video of my course. A lot of people will come into the chat and they'll say, well, what is this about? Where do I get the study materials from? How many tests is it? They just go through the list. I've already heard them. So I made a video just for you that has the answers to all of those things. So that's what I would recommend as well. Have a look at that. Eleonora in the chat room with a 50. Ron, super chat. Thank you so much for the super chat. No, not even a question. Just Eleonora says, here's 50, Ron. And I appreciate that. Thank you so much for your support and for keeping this crazy experiment going. It really is a lot of fun. We love doing these live streams, and we appreciate your support along those lines too. Abu Bakr in the chat room with an AED, $25 AED super chat. He writes, thank you so much, Professor Messer. I bought the practice exam for A+. Helped me a lot to pass the exam. We didn't even talk about the practice exam. I thought I had a slide here, but I didn't want to overwhelm everybody with the constant me talking about things. Here's my practice exam. I had a practice exam up. We were even gonna do one. Should we do a question? Let's do one. Here's a question. This is from my practice exam book. Since you brought it up, that it helped you a lot, we'll do a question directly from it. For those of you that haven't seen my practice exams book, these are 3 separate practice exams, full exams that you can step through. It is a PDF. It's delivered as a book. You can buy either a physical book. This is for the Core 2, but same idea. It's a physical book that you can read through, or there's a PDF. But in the PDF, I've added some additional interactive features. So for example, let's do one right now. Here's the question. It says, when a user starts their computer, the screen remains blank and the computer beeps twice. Which of these would be the most likely cause of this issue? Would it be the boot device is not connected, the memory is faulty, the operating system has become corrupted, or the PC is infected with malware? Now I'm using a PDF reader that allows me to do annotation. So I can go to these and I can click on them to choose, turn them on and off. I can write on the screen. If you're doing this on something like a tablet, you can change what you're doing. You can annotate, you can write, you can do whatever you'd like. You can make notes on here or just do whatever you would like with this. Once you decide what you think the answer is, you can either go to what we call the quick answer, which is on page 31, or you can go to the details, which is page 49. Now, if this is a book, then you'd have to flip ahead to page 49 to see what that answer happens to be. But since we're in the PDF, we just click the details, it takes me to page 49, gives me the question again, and then tells me the answer. So the answer is B, the memory is faulty. And like every good practice exam, I give you an explanation of why that is the correct answer. Now, if you're like me and you've taken a practice exam, you realize very quickly you don't get the right answers every time. You get the wrong answer. But a lot of these practice exams I've found don't tell you why the wrong answer was wrong. So in my practice exams book, I go through every incorrect answer and I explain to you why A was not the correct answer, why C was not the correct answer, and why D was not the correct answer. In many ways, you're actually learning more when you get it wrong so that you'll be able to get it right next time. And I also tell people, if you're going through the book, make sure, even if you get it right, read through the wrong answers, because the question on your exam might be a topic from the wrong answers, and it turns out on the exam it's going to be one that's right. So these are important things to know as well. And then also at the very bottom is a QR code or a link you can click on that will take you to my website, to the video associated with this particular problem. So if you needed more information, you can either watch the video, read through the video text, the entire transcript is here for my videos, and be able to do that. So you've got some choices. Once you're done with this, in my PDF reader, I've got a back button. I click the back button, and now I can go to the next question on the list. So that is my practice exams. Those are on my website. Go to ProfessorMesser.com. There's links at the top for A+, Core 1, A+, Core 2, and Security Plus. I've got practice exams books for those. That might help you well, and I'm glad they were able to help you as well. And thank you for the AED, the 25 AED Super Chat. Every bit of this helps keep the lights on, so we sure appreciate it. How many questions, Reef on the chat room, how many questions on the test will be on subnet masks and configuring IP addresses? I don't know if you're going to get a lot of subnet masking on the exam. If you go through the exam objectives, hey, I happen to have those right here. If you go through the exam objectives and we were to look at the networking section, let's do this. I'm going to quickly change this around real quick. One moment. We'll put this here. And on the exam, if we were to break this down, here they are. So under the networking section, we have protocols, ports, networking hardware devices, configuring SOHO networks, wireless networking protocols, services provided by networked hosts, explain common network configuration concepts. I guess that's the best place that we could probably find IP information. We have to know how to perform IP addressing. So that would include a subnet mask, as we can see here, static, dynamic, API-PA, link local. We need to understand DNS configuration, DHCP, and understand what DHCP reservations are. IPv4 and IPv6. You need to know how to configure a subnet mask, and then know about what a default gateway is, what a VPN is, what a VLAN is, and what NAT happens to be. That's it. You can see the focus on the exam is more about understanding what you need to know to configure a computer than it is about understanding IP addressing. Because you're going to be handed an IP address or subnet mask, and you're the one that's got to figure that out. How do I get it in my operating system and get it configured? But you don't have to do subnetting. You don't have to understand CIDR block notations. But you have to understand if somebody's showing you, oh, go configure this machine with 192.168.0.1, 255, 255, 255.0. Go. You have to understand, what did they just tell me? What was that they just explained? Well, they just said, in long terms, they said, please configure this machine with an IP address of 192.168.0.1 and assign it a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. That's sort of the scope of the A+ in its current form. That's about as much as you need to know. Now, when you get into Network Plus, there's going to be a lot of subnetting. There's going to be understanding how that IP address and subnet mask work together. There's a lot that happens there. But for A+, you don't have to worry about that. You're fine. You really don't need to understand how do you configure an operating system to properly talk on the network. That's kind of the scope. You don't have to go beyond that. You're really good. If I'm planning on taking an exam a few days after the expiration date, and we need to qualify what that is, Nathan asks, do I have the option to take the older version still? So I'm not sure exactly what you mean by taking an exam a few days after the expiration. Are you referring to the retirement date of an exam series that we expect will happen in July or somewhere after that? Is that what you're referring to? That is a retirement date. It's not expiration. It's a retirement of that exam type. Once they retire an exam series, can't take it anymore. That's it. Once that date hits in July, let's say they make the retirement date July 15th. Let's just take that date. I think it's going to be after, but let's go with that because that's a good conservative date. July 15th. Let's say you're reading, you're studying, you get all the way up to July 14th, and you're just not able to take the exam. You just maybe you even took one of the exams and passed, and you need to take the last exam, and you're just not able to get it in there before it is retired. Well, after July, whatever date this will be, we're saying it's July 15th. After that retirement date, the exam's no longer available. That's it. You don't get to take the exam. You have to effectively reset and start over again with the new exam series. So that's why you really do have to watch the dates. You have to understand how long it's going to take you to get through your studies. You have to be able to plan it out. You need to, of course, plan on what if you happen to take the exam and you don't pass it? Well, I could take it the next day. What if I don't pass that one? You have to wait, 7 days in the CompTIA world? Their retake policy says after the second failure, now there's a timer. Now you have to wait a week. So you have to time this so that you can really get both of these exams done. There will be people taking the existing exam version right until the very last day, because there always is people taking it on the very last day. Many of them pass, some of them don't, and they have to reset and do everything back. So it is important that you keep that in mind. But that is 6 months down the road, over 6 months technically from today. So you've got plenty of time right now to get through both of these exams. You just make sure you apply yourself and get through them in that time frame. Now, if you are looking at this and you think, you know what, in my life, with the things going on in my world, with what I know about the topics that are covered in the exam objective, I'm probably not going to be able to pass this by July or the estimated date of July. I'm just going to keep qualifying that so that everybody knows I'm making that date up. That's my best guess. That's a very conservative guess. It may be after that. But maybe you're looking at that and thinking, I also don't like the deadline. I don't like being pushed for a date. It makes me uncomfortable. I don't like that. I think I'm going to take the newer exam. You know, that's a perfectly reasonable perspective. It obviously limits your ability to be certified in a timely amount. But if you think you're not going to be certified in that time frame anyway, that is one of the few scenarios where I might tell someone, maybe you are right. Maybe going to the next exam makes more sense for you. There's always a corner case. And that may be your corner case for that one. It's up to you and how you work. But I think your best chance for passing this exam is to take the current version. It has the most amount of content available. There's all these books available. There's tons of videos available. There's tons of practice exams available. Take it before it retires. It's almost like a gimme at this point. It's not quite that ridiculously easy, but it's certainly more advantageous for you to take the current sets of exams than having to wait and study new materials for new topics that we really don't understand the complete scope yet until the exams are out. You know, a lot of what we do when we're creating these courses is taking a best guess of context from what we're able to pull from the exam objectives, because they've given the exam objectives to content creators already. We're already building the new content, but we don't know with some of these topics how deep they're going to go. We kind of have to measure it based on what we know of the exam. So those of us that have created CompTIA exams before, we have a pretty good idea of what they're asking for. You know, I couldn't imagine if you're sort of jumping into it for the first time, you'd have no concept and being able to have that. So what if, Emmanuel asks, so what if you take the exams, you take Core 1 and you take Core 2 before the retirement in July? What good is the certification if it retires in July? Well, the exam retires in July. The certification does not. Once you pass your 2 exams, you are certified for 3 years. Doesn't matter what they do with the exams. They could change the exam version every day for the next 3 years. It has no effect on you. Once you pass both exams, you are A+ certified, and you can call your A+ certification and say that you're A+ certified for 3 years. And then, of course, you're just going to renew it. I doubt most people take the exams again. They usually will renew by collecting CEUs. They'll take a higher level exam. They'll take a third-party exam and apply those CEUs, or they'll use CertMaster CE, and they'll use those as their renewal process and tack on another 3 years. So you'll probably never take the exams again. You'll just keep renewing, which, by the way, also means someone who took their exams and passed 6 years ago and has simply been renewing their certification is just as A+ certified as somebody who walks in the door and takes their exam today. Employers don't care. They just want you to be certified. So that's the way you should focus on this. Just get the cert, put it in your pocket. You're good for 3 years. It's a great way to do it. And for those of you that have tuned in, we're taking questions from the chat room. The chat room would be the YouTube chat that's available on YouTube, or the one that's connected to professormesser.com/live. That's the link that's on the screen. We'll take the chat in there as well. From Kevin, who obviously is looking over his bills from the holidays, asks, I'm not sure if you answered this, but do you have to pay for renewal? What a good question. Well, everything. You have to pay for everything, Kevin. There are no free rides in this world. However, you may be able to renew your certification by performing other things that you would have paid for anyway. So, for example, here's a good example. I'll just sorry to bring this up. Other people in chat room are saying nothing's free. Actually, there is one that sort of is. Let's say you earn your A+ certification. You're now A+ certified. It's in your pockets. It's good for 3 years. And let's say that 3 years from now, you take your two years and 51 weeks from now, you take the Network Plus certification exam and you pass it to become Network Plus certified. When you take your Network Plus exam, it renews your A+ exam automatically. You don't pay anything extra. There's no CEU fees. There's nothing extra you have to do. It just automatically renews your A+. So you would have paid to take the Network Plus anyway, and for $0 additional dollars, you've just renewed your A+. So now you've got A+ and Network Plus. They are synced up now to update and renew on the same day. And now you've got 3 years that you've renewed this for. Same thing would apply if then you went out and took your Security Plus. It will renew your A+ and Network Plus. So there's a chart on the CompTIA website that tells you what exams renew other exams so that you can create a strategy for yourself based on those. So technically not free, but sort of free. So obviously you have to pay to take the Network Plus exam, but as a nice freebie thrown in, it also renews your A+ if you happen to have one. So it's maybe something to consider as you go through this. How do I feel? Nick asks, how do I feel about having Network Plus and Security Plus, but no A+? Is that a disadvantage? I don't know. Well, not for me. I'm not hiring you. The ability to determine whether that's valuable or not is based on what you plan on doing with these certifications. Are you applying to jobs that want to see a Network Plus and Security Plus? Or are you applying to jobs that would prefer you had an A plus as well? That's the determining factor. I can't answer that. Or you may be applying to jobs, don't care if you were certified at all. Those jobs exist. There are people out there that don't care about certs. They just want to hire somebody. Usually they're hiring you for less because you're not certified. It's a nice way to say, I'm hiring. You don't have to have a certification to work here because I'm not going to pay you well. But if certified, maybe you can ask for a little more money if you have those certifications in your pocket. So that's why it's up to what you're doing. If you're going into job, when I took my certs, let me back up real quick. When I took my certifications from CompTIA for the first time, the first one I took was the Security Plus. Then I took Network Plus. Then I took A Plus. So I did it backwards. I did it exactly backwards from the way that most people tell you you should do it. But I was already working in the industry as a systems engineer for a security company. I was working for, at the time, Network Associates. So we had antivirus, IPS, firewalls. We were very security focused, network analysis tools. And so getting the Security Plus best fit my particular job at that time. So I started with Security Plus. Why would I get A Plus? We weren't doing anything with the operating systems necessarily. We weren't really working down with the hardware of a computer. We really weren't doing a lot of, there's obviously a huge networking component when you talk about security, but it wasn't a pure networking job that I was in. I wasn't doing routing. I wasn't doing switching. So Security Plus really fit my role the best. So it's a good example of how it really depends on your specific scenario. Do you need Security Plus to get that job? Are employers asking you to have Security Plus or Network Plus? Are they asking you for A plus? Are they asking you for a Microsoft Azure? Are they asking you for an AWS certification? What are they asking? That's really the determining factor. That's why I often tell people when you're planning this, of what they often ask, what do I do next? I just earned my A plus. What do I do next? I don't know. What are you trying to do? Why are you earning these certifications? We don't tend to earn the certs just to earn them. We tend to earn these certifications because they will get us a job. They'll get us a better job. They have some type of value associated with it that we're able to use. So when we consider that, I think it becomes really useful to understand why you would be going through this. Often I'll have people come to my site that say, I got an A plus, a Network Plus, a Security Plus, an AWS, an Azure, Microsoft, online cloud-based. I've got this one. They have this 10 certifications they've created. I go, wow. So what do you do now? They go, oh, I don't work in IT. Like, why are you doing all these certifications? Well, I thought I needed to. Well, no, you need to figure out what employers would like you to have and then go get those. In fact, you want to be very careful not to overqualify yourself. You don't want to walk into a help desk job and tell somebody, I have my A plus, my Network Plus, my Security Plus, my CCNA, and an AWS cert. They may be looking at you and thinking, oh, you're a little overqualified for this job. This job is going to be very boring. We're going to hire you. You're going to get here and realize it's a help desk job. And you're going to be taking care of password resets. But you're someone who already understands routing and switching. You're going to be so bored you're going to leave in a month. So this is not the best fit for you. We're probably not going to hire you for this job. That happens in the minds of the person hiring, happens all the time. You have to be very careful about that. You want to fit your skills with what they're asking for. And you want to fit it perfectly or just barely above what they're asking for. And that's why I always tell people, if you look at the videos that I have on why your resume keeps getting rejected or ways to get your first job in IT with no experience, I often tell people in there, make a custom resume for the job that you're applying for so that you are giving them exactly what they're looking for. That is your best bet. That is the best way to do it. Now, even if you've got all these other certs, maybe you just love the technology and you went and got your CCNA, you've got an AWS cert, you've got an Azure cert, you've got all kinds of certifications along that list, but you're applying for a help desk position, maybe only tell them about 1 or 2 of those. If they're asking for A+ and Network Plus, put those on the list. Just ignore all the other stuff. You know, that will help you later. Those are great certifications to have. They will certainly come in handy later, but don't have them muddy the water while you're in that process, because it can work against you. That's a real challenge. In the chat room, KB asks, I'm about to graduate from community college with a cybersecurity degree. Congratulations. At what level do you suggest I start my certification? I haven't done any certification so far. I think this is probably a good adjunct to what we were just talking about. The real question is, what do employers in your area want to see you have? Now, if you are in, let's take a very United States-centric perspective of this. Let's say that you live in the D.C. area. You live in Virginia, you live in Maryland, you live in D.C. And you're just out of school, you've got a cybersecurity degree. Well, if you look at jobs from the U.S. federal government, especially Department of Defense or Department of Defense partners, KB says, oh, I'm in Maryland, then you probably want to get your Security Plus, because that is the entry-level cert for federal jobs. It tends to be that way. I bet if you went out to the jobs in your area and you look to see what jobs were available and you look at the requirements, I bet Security Plus would come up a lot. And many people that come to my site will start with Security Plus because they're in that same boat. Could they use A+? Sure. Would Network Plus be valuable to the overall skill set? Yes, it would. But employers are asking for Security Plus, so that's where they start, which is fine. That's a fine certification to start with. It's an entry-level security cert, and it's required for you to have these jobs in those particular roles. Now, if you're not in that federal DC area or working with a federal partner elsewhere in the country, you may find that employers have a different set of requirements. You may find that they want A+, or maybe they want Network Plus, or maybe they want a Microsoft cert, or who knows what it happens to be. It's different depending on where you go. So I say in my video, and if you go through the YouTube video description, I have a link to this video of how to get a job in IT with no experience. I tell people, create a spreadsheet, look at the jobs in your area that you feel you're qualified for, write down everything in that spreadsheet, copy down everything they're asking for. Do they want a 4-year degree? What kind of 4-year degree would they like? Do they want a certification? What certifications do they want? What other things are they saying would be good to know? Make a list of all these so that you can then look at that spreadsheet after you've gone through 10, 15, 20, 25 jobs, and you can look at it and go, wow, 18 of these jobs have asked me for an A+ certification. Okay, well, there you go. You need to go get your A+. Or you look at it and go, 10 of these jobs have asked for Security Plus. Okay, I need to go get a Security Plus cert. It should be able to point you in the right direction. Doing that recon and documenting all of this will have you, it really will help you work through those pieces. A lot of people come to my site and they get Security Plus because they've heard that Security Plus is what everybody wants. They've heard that Security Plus is interesting, and ultimately they know they would like to get into security. So why wouldn't you start with Security Plus? Okay, that sounds great, but what are employers asking for? And if nobody's asking for Security Plus, maybe that's not the first place you should start. It's one of those things where, and I've mentioned this in other study groups, there is this unusual perspective in our particular industry that there are a large number of entry-level security jobs out there, and there just isn't. You don't tend to start in security. that's not where you get into it. It's not usually where you get into the door in IT. Now, that's not necessarily always true. There are entry-level security jobs out there. For example, if you're in a large metropolitan area, there's a number of companies that may be running or using a security operations center or a SOC. So you can go in and get an entry-level job, which is sort of like a help desk for security things. You want to look at it that way. There's positions there where you could be that first-level person on the SOC, and then you would determine who gets this particular ticket. It's a good way to get into the industry. It's a good way to kind of jumpstart your security experience. There's just not a lot of those jobs out there. There is a much, much bigger pool of A+ jobs out there than there are security plus jobs at the entry level. Because there just is. That's just the way the industry works. When you get into security, you already need to have a good understanding of operating systems. You need to understand networking almost at an expert level, so that by the time you're in security, you're already well established with these technologies. You already understand how all of this is going over the network. You can break apart the packets. You understand when you're configuring these systems and setting them up, how the networking should be integrated so that the firewall is working properly with the switches, it's working properly with the routers. It just makes sense. That's where you should focus. Find out what the users, what the employers would like you to have, and that's where you should focus your efforts. That's just a numbers game from that perspective. Now, if your objective is not to get a job in IT, it's really more about your own personal knowledge, well, then go take whatever you'd like. But I would say the vast majority of people coming to my site are those trying to get a certification so they can either get a job in IT or get a better job in IT. You have to figure out what works for you and go along those lines. So in the chat room, this is a good point that was made. Play in the chat room says, so isn't entry-level security requirements 5 years experience and a CISSO? You're not necessarily wrong. I think that you've kind of summarized this perfectly, which is entry level in security is not entry level in IT. Entry level in IT is more like A+ network plus. Entry level in security, you've already got all of that in your wheelhouse. You understand all of these technologies. You've worked in technology for a while, and now you're just getting into security from that side. So you're absolutely correct. That is the perspective in the security world. And having worked as a systems engineer for a firewall company, I can agree everybody I worked with on those security sides were people that had already been in IT for a long period of time. In fact, many of the people I would talk with day to day were people in security that I had also spoken with on the network administration or network management side 10 years prior. So they worked their way up into security. Just makes sense for working through that. Wyatt in the chat room hears me talking about all these different tiers for help desk. What in the world are you talking about? These tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. Generally speaking, this is the hierarchy of technology at least the help desk or entry level, or really the IT level. There are different ways to apply this, but you can think of the tier 1 as the first level of getting in the door in IT. If you have someone who is working at their desk or they're on the road and they forget their password, they need to call somebody to fix their password. Well, this is sort of the most basic of IT tasks. It's not very complicated, but it's incredibly important. You don't want any of these people are trying to work, so you being able to accomplish that is incredibly important. But it's also relatively simple, or something you can learn relatively easily. So they need to have somebody on the phones who answers that phone. Hi, thanks for calling. This is James. How can I help you? Thanks for calling the help desk. What can we do for you? And then they'll say, I forgot my password. All right, let's go through the password reset process. And every company has a different process for resetting the password and confirming the person they're speaking with is the correct person. and how they would set it up. So reset their password. Oh, can you log in? Yep, I can log in. Great. Thanks for calling. Thanks very much. Goodbye. That's tier 1. Didn't have to do anything other than reset the password. You knew exactly how to do it. It's very basic. In the world of IT, it's sort of the entry-level basic piece. But there certainly is going to be someone who calls in and says, I'm trying to run an application, SentryOne. And when I run SentryOne, it gives me a DLL error saying that this particular problem is associated with this other thing. Like, okay, I need to get you over to the next tier that handles problems with SentryOne. So let me get your information. We'll put in a ticket, and I will expedite it up to tier 2. So that goes to someone who's a little more knowledgeable in a particular application, in a particular technology, in a particular network, in a particular server or Windows or whatever it is. They're smarter than you are. So they're at that higher tier. But there may be problems that person can't fix. All right, we need to go the next tier up. So we have all of these smarter and smarter people as we go up the tiers on the different levels for this. I think that's where it's very useful to always try to interact or get information or learn what's happening at those higher tiers. If somebody's troubleshooting a problem and you have the ability to listen in while they troubleshoot that problem that you had no idea what it was about. So they're looking at, oh, he's having a SentryOne problem. I'm going to listen into the SentryOne troubleshooting. Okay, what's going on? Oh, he went into Windows. Okay, they went into the registry. All right, they modified that particular hive. Okay, got it. Okay, that fixed the problem. Got it. Now, next time that comes up, now you know at least where the problems are occurring. You know it's something relating to a configuration setting in the registry, and you know that, let me get you to tier 2. It sounds like a registry problem. They should be able to fix this. So up it goes to their level, and then they can resolve that particular problem. Those are the different tiers of IT, and they're pretty important because now you have somewhere to go. It's a good example of how you just move up in this industry. You keep going up, you keep making higher and higher, you keep learning, and then you can then decide what you'd like to do. If you become an expert in SentryOne, then now you can be the SentryOne expert. Now you can go get a job working for the company that writes and makes that particular software. Now you can become an expert on your own, doing your own type of consulting for that software. You know, there's so many options. You can become a specialist in deploying this software. You know, it just depends. It just depends on what makes sense for what you're doing or what you would like to do. And one thing about IT is that whatever you decide to do now is going to be very different than what you will be doing 10, 15 years down the road, because this industry moves way too fast. There is constant opportunity, because as new technologies suddenly appear, as new systems are created, as new applications are developed, and you become an expert in those particular technologies, you become very valuable. You can now ask for a little more money. You can now take on more responsibility. You can be a specialist and you happen to know things that other people don't. It's one of the beauties of IT. It's one of the reasons I make these courses is I realize these are entry-level courses, A+ Network Plus Security Plus. This is just the beginning. This is just the start of the fun. At this point, we can now decide where we would like to go and what we would like to do. And it's really up to you, and it's really up to what you want to do. Probably more than any other industry, IT allows you to make your own decisions on what you do with your career. And if you're in a position with a company and it fits you perfectly, you can continue with that company. If it doesn't fit you perfectly, you've got options. You're not stuck. It's not like there's nowhere else to go. There's everywhere else to go. You've got a world of opportunity available. It's hard to find any other vertical like that, any other market like that. It's very remarkable to have that. All right, very quickly, a couple of things that came in, because we're in overtime for this. So questions, in my opinion, are you more likely to get hired for an entry-level position in the public sector or the private sector? Well, statistically, there are a lot more jobs available in the private sector. Public sector has fewer jobs available. So if I had to play the odds, but either way, the real goal, especially entry level, doesn't matter. Just go get the job. Where are the positions open? That's where you should go. It doesn't matter. The entry level or the way that you get into these places and earn the knowledge, just get in the chair and begin learning the knowledge. I don't care if it's public sector. I don't care if it's private sector. I don't care what it is. Just start learning. Start being that sponge. Start understanding all the things around you and start reading up on everything you see. It becomes so important. And a question also from True North 10. I'm 50, want to change careers, move into IT. Is it doable at this age? Well, it is, but there are caveats associated with it when you're not one of the kids. This is probably, it's not specific to IT, but it's sort of an issue when you start getting older, is that there is a bit of ageism or challenges with ageism that you have to get over. First thing, when you start moving from one type of vertical market to another, one type of area to another. Let's say you work in transportation, or you work in agriculture, or you work in food service, or you do something else. You drive trucks, you're a nurse, you're doing something else. And then you move into IT, you got to start at the bottom. Now, if you're 50, ostensibly you have worked up to a certain level. So you're making a certain amount of money every year. Well, if you want to move into IT, you got to start at the bottom and work your way back up again. There may be financial challenges with that you have to consider. Now, you may have saved up some cash. You may have a strategy. I'm going to work in this job for 6 months, for 9 months, for a year, and then we're going to go somewhere else, and we'll move up quickly. You may already have that figured out. So just something to consider. The ageism is a concern, though, because people tend to hire for entry-level positions. People seem to be programmed in their brains to hire younger people for that. So that's where being 50 and smarter than them helps. Because certainly in your travels through the years in whatever you are doing today, you have met people that work in IT, that have connections to people who work in IT, or maybe the company you already work for has an IT department, which is even better. Let's say you're in medicine, you're doing something medically, but you don't want to be in the medicine side anymore. You want to be on the IT side. The IT department in the hospital or wherever you work certainly needs some of your knowledge. It's so hard to get knowledge about the business in IT. So there may be a natural move into IT where they don't necessarily have to start you at the rock bottom. They kind of start you up a little bit, or certainly hire you and bring you on board with the expectation that we can move you up faster because you already understand the medical part of this. So there's the ability to add on or to use, to leverage some of this work that you've already done in your industry up to this point. But I would highly recommend, if you are moving from one segment into IT and you're older, that it really helps to take advantage of people you know. Not advantage, but to use those relationships that you built, because people would like to help you. One of the greatest things you'll find if you go out to LinkedIn is you can reach out to people and say, I'm really interested in getting a job where you are. What would you recommend I do? They're so good at helping. Like, oh, I can help you out with that. Here's what you should do. Here's where you should focus. Here's who you should talk to. Here's what you should have under your belt. Here's some requirements that are really going to help you when you try to get this job. Perhaps more than it's really remarkable how well people work together and help each other in this industry. And I think that's one where you should take advantage of people wanting to help you. They're out there and they're willing to do it. So it's a balancing act. Now, obviously, from a technology perspective, the computers don't care how old you are. thankfully. Thankfully, the computers don't care how old you are. So that helps too, is that as long as you're knowledgeable in this, then there's a place where you can fit into IT. Just have to figure it out. It's one where, in fact, now that when you're a little bit older, a little more mature, your priorities are a little bit different. You might even be able to move up a little bit faster, or with the help of people you already know, they already trust you, they already know your work ethic, you may be able to move up a little better because of that. So you've got some balancing acts to work through there. Nothing's easy. It's always going to be a challenge when you make a move like that, but there are ways that you can position yourself best to be able to make that move as quickly, as seamlessly as possible. Pretty important. Well, I think that brings us, well, since we were in overtime, I was going to say that brings us to the top of the hour, brings us past the top of the hour. We went a little bit over, but that's okay. We are more than happy to do it. First one of the year to have the study group here. We're so glad you were able to join us. We do another study group 2 days from now on Thursday. This is Tuesday as we record this. On Thursday at noon, we do the Core 2 study group. We'd love for you to come back and be able to answer questions. I have a whole new set of questions. I do new questions every month. So a whole new set of Core 2 questions. Those are obviously going to focus more on security, operating systems, and troubleshooting of those. So we'd love to have you come back and see how well you do with those questions. I'll get the lights turned back on. We'll start everything back up on Thursday. We'd love to see you back here. Thanks for joining us. We're going to see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Thanks, everybody.